Justine, I'd really love to delve into getting some insights for you around building a business to sell. So what we know is that you have very successfully sold businesses 3 times over, and we're really curious about what is it that's the most important thing to consider when you're creating a saleable business?
Sure, great question. I think, when I first started to go into business for myself, which was back in 1994, so a very long time ago, a lot of the people that I spoke to about it thought I was a little crazy. I did it anyway. And not long after, I went to a school reunion, and one of my friends at the school reunion said, "Well, okay, you've started a business, good for you. But how are you going to get out? Because the goal when you start a business is not to just start a business, but it's to have an exit plan, So I think, something that always stuck with me every time I started a new business, what's the exit plan? So I think the number one thing to say if you go into business is that you need an exit plan. Define the end goal when you start. So many of us go into business because we've got that thing, that service, that product, that transformation that we want to sell, that we want to impart to our clients, and it's great. And we go on with this idea that we're going to make money and do all the things, but we never really think about the end. What does it look like if we're fed up with our business? What's our exit strategy? So that is the number one thing I would say about setting your business up to sell. There are lots of other things we can talk about, but that is the number one thing that you need to go in with.
I think that's really, really refreshing, because it's not something we hear a lot of, that whole idea of, I'm going to go and start a business. Great. So when are you going to sell it? It's sort of like,
exactly.
I certainly didn't go into business with that in mind. Obviously Nicky and I, because we went into a partnership, we did do the pre-thinking around what happens if one of us wants to exit. And we've got a partnership agreement where we sort of like a prenup, I guess, for business, where we've said, if things change and, our goals change or whatever, we've got something there which sets the intention from the beginning. But what I see with our clients who are talking about, like, they've been in business, the 2 that come to mind have been in business for quite some time, and now they're beginning to think about it. But the problem is they're starting behind the 8 ball, because the systems and structure are needing to be created whilst they're flying the plane, that whole, the plane gets built whilst you're flying it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Because they're, and I wonder whether this influences it, because the structure hasn't been created, or the thinking's not there around, I eventually want to sell this. We don't go in intentionally, which means we create a bit of chaos around us. And then we go, I've had it. I feel exhausted. I'm burnt out. I want out of this. But the reality check then is, who's going to buy a business?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's not that easy to sell a business. People make it, even though I've done it a few times, people make it sound like it's an easy thing, and you know the sort of business that you've created and the transformation that you're making. But how many people only buy from you because it's you inside of that business? It's you that is running that container. It's not this thing that's bigger than you that you've created. And so I think that's why it's really important to, even if you have been in business for a while and you're starting to think, okay, maybe I do need an exit strategy. Maybe I don't want to do this forever. Even if you're not in that position where you've got, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, it's about sitting down and really starting to reverse engineer things. So thinking of things like, okay, what's my ideal time frame to sell? What sort of financial target do I want to achieve? How much money do I want for my business? How much am I happy with? And then I suppose any, personal or professional aspirations that might be tied to the sale. So do you want it to be a jumping off point for something else? Is it your swan song? Are you going to go and retire? Are you going to go back to a paid job? And I think when you know those things, it's about then reverse engineering and kind of then, I suppose, almost resetting your business up to get it ready to sell. So there's a few different elements of how you could do that, and I'm happy to kind of talk through those as well.
I also think what's really great about this conversation is that if you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, but I don't want to sell my business, that's actually not why I'm doing this. It might be a lifestyle business, or it's your legacy business. And I think what's really important to remember is that even if you don't want to now, by following these types of processes, thought patterns, thinking about how you're setting up your business, it's all about choice. You want to build a business that if you decide, actually, I'm keen to do something else, you can exit. So an exit strategy or an exit plan isn't only because you want to exit the business, because the benefit of creating a business that you can sell and it can be very profitable is that you create a kick-ass business. You create a business by design that is going to give you time freedom. And like the examples we gave, a lot of the times business owners, they might not be thinking about the exit strategy, but then the business ends up sucking the life out of them. And it's not a place that they enjoy or why they went into business in the first place. So I think that's a really important perspective. If you're listening thinking, oh yeah, but that's not where I want to go, still focus on this, because you will create an amazing business with systems that will support and set you up and give you choice. I think I'd love to hear some more from you, Justine, around the practicalities you mentioned, the considerations. And I think that that's just a really important perspective, because anyone in business needs to be thinking this, whether we choose to act on it or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, you remember that little thing called the pandemic that we kind of had to deal with in 2020. So that, for me, meant that I really redesigned my whole business structure. And basically what that did is that meant that I had a really diverse business model where I had various income streams. And honestly, there was nowhere in my mind at that point that I thought, I'm setting this up to sell it, even though I always go back to what this friend had said to me, back in the 90s about, having that exit plan. I thought, no, I'm just going to create this nice little business and it's all going to go along, and I'm going to run these 3 different streams and happy days. And then got to the end of last year and I had a terrible health scare. And all of a sudden, the biggest money spinner in my business, the biggest income stream in my business, was the stream that I decided that I started to, I suppose, despise the most. Because even though I had staff who were helping me run that stream, it was sucking the life out of me. And so for me, even though I had not planned to sell any of my business, I thought, okay, that stream is the thing that if I get rid of that, if I sell that, then life is going to change for me. And so, that's just one example of how things can change, I guess, and you can make that decision that you want to sell. But it all comes down to just having those fundamentals in place. So it's about building that really strong foundation in your business. So whether you have a single income stream or whether you have multiple income streams, it's about really understanding that vision, the mission, and the values for your business. Who are your ideal customers? Who are you trying to serve? What transformation can you make for them? And, what are the mission, are the values that are wrapped around that? Because that's how, most of us would run our businesses. And then just building that robust, set of foundations in the finance area, the systems and processes, pulling together a strong team, having that culture, making sure that your marketing arm is really set up well. All of those foundation pieces in your business, just getting those set up. Because when you sell a business, you want to be able to sell it really as what we call a going concern, which literally means that I walk out the door one day and the new owner takes over on the next. And for all intents and purposes, the clients don't really know that the business is even sold, because to them, it's business as usual. And that's how I sold my business. And I was able to do that because I had kick-ass systems and processes set up. I had really clean financial records. So all of the, everything was in place in terms of my finances. I had a great team. Everybody knew where they were supposed to be, what they were supposed to be doing, and what, our end goal was. And the culture in the business was great. So the new owner completely got that. He really fit that culture. And so he could literally buy it, take it over. And instead of me being the figurehead, it became him. So I think that, that's super important, getting those foundations right. And, one of the things is definitely around the finances. I think, so many people start their business and they don't think about the money side of things. But it's always like, oh, it's such a small business. I'll get that, cloud accounting set up when, or I'll employ an accountant when, or I'll get that financial help when. There's always a pause and a when. But I think you never know in your business when that potential buyer is going to come along. So I always say, start as you mean to continue, keep those accurate records, set up great business money habits and practices from the start and stay compliant. So, keeping those clean financial records is another thing. I think it's about documenting all those standard operating procedures so that you can sell as a going concern. People can come in, they can just pick up where you left off. They've got, whether they're written down, whether it's a whole bunch of Loom videos, a combination of all of the above. Anybody can come into the business and pick it up today and, run it exactly like you had run it, to make sure you've got those customer and supplier relationships that are really working well, that you've got this great customer database, that you nurture your customers, and likewise with any suppliers that you're using. And, to be constantly aware of what the profitability is in your business, how you can maximize that profitability, and what the growth potential is for your business. And so I think about those sorts of things. There are lots of other things you can do too, but they're the key.
Well, I can't let an opportunity go past without jumping on the bandwagon about money and really setting ourselves up for wealth creation and for the expectation of building a profitable business. Because what breaks my heart is sometimes speaking to people who have established businesses who haven't even got to the point yet where they're paying themselves a wage that feels worthy of what they're putting in. Like if we're back in the corporate days, we would match our salary against our skills. And sometimes I think we start that business off thinking, oh no, well, I've just got to make enough money to cover my expenses, rather than I want a profit and my expenses, and that should be the goal I'm going towards.
Yeah.
So I just had to jump on my soapbox for a moment there.
Yeah.
But I also love in what you're saying is that everything you talked about is actually, it doesn't even matter if you sell it or not, because you're talking about creating a business that gives you choice.
Yep.
And this is what we align so closely in that thinking, is around that belief that we want time freedom. We want to have an amazing business, but we want the freedom to be able to not feel like we're pulled in a million directions and we're stuck in the busy trap. So I'm curious to know, with the way that you approach business, what has that meant in relation to the way you live your life outside of business? Like, how does that play out for you as you're creating this intentional structure around finances, around the way that you do things in the business, like everything with that filter? What does that give you as a business owner?
Well, I think it's exactly that. For me, part of the reason that I started a business way back when was family. I wanted to spend time with my kids. I didn't want to be that person that was, on the clock working for someone else. There have been times, throughout the journey since 1994 where I've jumped in and I've done a contract here and a contract there, and that's what I had to do. But every single time I did it, it reminded me that when I was on somebody else's time, when I was on somebody else's clock, that choice, that freedom for me was taken away. And I understand in saying, sounds like it's a very privileged position, but when I went into business, I deliberately set up my business around my family. I wanted to achieve what I needed to achieve while the kids were sleeping when they were little, or while they were in daycare, or while they were at school. And then when they got bigger, I needed to set up my business so that I could, ferry them around and take them where they needed to go. And now that my kids are older, for me, it's about understanding that, I have a business that, where I can set my time. I can say, okay, I'm not working on Monday or Friday this week, or next week I'm having an entire week off. But I know because I've set it up, and to your point, Ness, about, paying a wage, paying super, setting up your business so that you're doing those things, covering the cost of business and still making a profit. I've intentionally done that so I can have that freedom. I know how many hours a week I need to work. I know what I need to earn to achieve all of the above. And then I can go and do other things that fill my cup that I really love. So for me, that's really important, because as a business owner, if I wanted to be available 24/7, or if I wanted to be on the clock from 9 to 5 every day, it's probably easier to just go work for someone else.
Yeah,
definitely. We talk about that. Let's not create corporate jobs from our businesses. Like, let's not just turn it into probably what one of the reason of many of us actually went into business in the first place was to not have that. And I think what's also really cool about this conversation is you talked earlier about one of the foundational elements was also around documenting processes. Oh my goodness, which is, well, in my world, probably one of the most unsexy things about business. In most people, there are some people that get excited about that, but trying to actually tether down or get the information that's out of either business owners or leaders or key people in the business to get it out of their head and document it. And I love that you also said it could be Loom videos, it could be written processes. There's a lot of creative ways to actually get that information written down. And what I'm hearing is, yes, that might seem like maybe a waste of time right now, or a pain in the bum, or boring, or whatever that thing is. But it's about reframing and going, actually, if I can get those processes out and down, as an example, the payoff is time freedom. The payoff is time freedom. It is building that business by design. It's not falling into the trap of creating a day job. So short-term pain, long-term gain.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as you said, particularly if you're working on your own, you're probably thinking, why do I even need to spend the time doing that? But even if you never intend on selling your business, even if you intend on doing it and then just one day stopping, I think you never know when you're going to be in a position where you might want to scale your business, where you might want to go, I don't know, to the Bahamas for a month, and you want things to keep running. And the easiest way to do that is to set up something in the back end. So as I say, anyone can walk in and take over. You might want to hire because you're scaling. And if you've got all the standard operating procedures set up, if somebody else knows how to do a job, sure, it's going to take some training, but gosh, it makes life so much easier to get things done the way that you want them to get done. Because I don't know if you girls will agree with this, but I think most business owners, particularly if they're solopreneurs, kind of think that nobody can do all the things as well as they can do the things. So I think we're all kind of perfectionists in our own way, and we all know that we can do things to the degree that is acceptable to us. But the truth is, if we keep running at that level, we're going to burn out. So eventually you want to bring in help, and there's lots of things, I promise you, that you can outsource. And if you've got those procedures in place, they're still going to get done to that level. Maybe not as well as you could do them, but it's going to free up your time to do maybe some money-making stuff in the business, or maybe just to have an afternoon off.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. What's coming to mind is one of our clients, and this business has been operating for, a very long time, and started with just her and has grown. But it's interesting that when it comes to talking about training others and working out your standards around, what does it look like in our business for this particular service offer? And she's really struggling with that. But every single job is really different. And it's just something that I kind of know and I can sense. And I don't know how to explain that to others. And so it's interesting having that conversation with someone who doesn't see the pattern, because they're so close in it, and they're going, yeah, but I could go out to this job and I could, you know, say this today, but I'd say this tomorrow. And what became the conversation that we had was, you know, well, this is a new problem to solve and this is going to require different thinking. So I'm curious to know, what is it that you think would be the mindset shift or the belief shift or just some sort of shift in there if you find you're coming up with all the reasons why you can't do it? You know, those excuses that come after, oh yeah, I would have systems in place, but ...
Yeah.
What is it that we need to shift in our way that we approach it or think about it in order to see a change?
Well, here's the cold, hard truth, because you said that before, Nikki, that you didn't think standard operating procedures were sexy. Well, I can tell you 100% that people think finance in business is the least sexy part of business, right?
Apart from people like you and Ness, I think, yes.
So when I am speaking to people about finance in particular, often they have exactly that dialogue with me about, but I want things to change, but, and they can't see what the next step is. And the cold, hard truth in this is that if nothing changes, nothing changes. Yeah. So if you want to see the next result, if you want to see something, you know, different, an improvement, a step the next level in your business, then you need to be open to change. And that is the reality. I think if you ever engage a business coach or someone to work with you or help you as a mentor in particular, I think you both would have encountered this, that you do have clients who are very kind of, you know, there's a brick wall there that you almost need to knock down. It's like they expect you to come in and wave a magic wand and it's all okay. But it's not going to be like that. And unfortunately, there's no shortcuts. You just have to do the work. And it's often those small, simple, consistent changes. For me with finance, which is obviously where I specialize, it's just about, you know, really sharing these tiny incremental changes that clients can make every day to their business to get those quick wins. Because I think when you see the quick wins and they add up and add up and add up, all of a sudden over a week, 2 weeks, a month, things do change. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I can see it now. So sometimes it's dragging them, you know, by the teeth, saying you just need to do this.
And what comes to mind there is this, I think there's a quote about it, but there's a price of entry for every growth level. So there's a price of entry. I'm going to say that again, price of entry for every growth level, which might mean actual money price, because, you know, you're paying for working with a coach as an example, or you're paying for an update in systems and in the business and software. But it sometimes is also a price in terms of time, investing some time in getting the processes up. We cannot, for every level of growth for ourselves and our businesses, there's always something that we have to invest. And I also think about this analogy of a brick wall. What you're talking about with these little incremental steps, these little actions that you can take, which we talk about a lot in all areas of business and personal development. It's basically focusing on one little brick at a time. You don't have to, you know, slam into that wall and try and, like, I feel like there's a comedy of trying to smash a door open with your body slam it. You don't have to do that. What's one little brick that you can take out one at a time, so that you also can still have this sense of time freedom and finding this harmony and flow in business that other people talk about as work-life balance, but we prefer to look at it as a harmony and a flow. So I wonder, Justine, we always like to finish out with one actionable action that people can take. What do you think, in context of the conversation that we've had, and again, getting that business raring to go, so you have the choice of selling, even if you don't want to? We've touched on a lot around some practical aspects, but also the mindset piece around this. One action that people can take in 24 hours that, you know, walking away from this in context of this amazing conversation that we've had.
I think that the biggest favor any business owner can do, and you can easily do this over the next 24 hours, because let's face it, we're probably thinking about our business 24/7, 365, is to really just take a critical, almost helicopter view of your business and be honest with yourself about where those weak spots are. So is it your finances? Is it your marketing? Is it that you don't have any standard operating procedures? And I think once you identify what that is, it could be that you've got all these great customers, but you're actually not nurturing those customers. You've forgotten about people who you've worked with in the past, and that needs to be beefed up in your business. Find the weak spot, identify it, and then decide that you're going to change it, that you're going to improve it, that you're going to make it better, and you can work out what the next step is. But I think it's just having that really clear, honest discussion with yourself about where the weakness is, and then doing something to make that weakness better. Turn it into a strength.
Yeah, I love that. What comes to mind is, if you want some help with that, we do have our mini business health check, which helps you to understand that helicopter view of the business. I think it only takes like 4 minutes or something to answer the questions in there, but it does give you, excuse me, it does give you the opportunity to see, where do I need to focus my attention? Hand over to you, Nikki.
Excellent. Thank you. I love getting onto that. We always we talk about getting on the balcony. Actually, our business mentor, Janine Garner, shared this metaphor with us around, it's the same thing as getting on the helicopter of the business. And I get on the balcony. So you're looking at the dance floor, which is the day-to-day, runnings of the business. And we get up on the balcony. And I also want to say, we had a really great conversation with Donna McGeorge a few episodes ago, and she suggested one of our actions was to book a meeting with ourselves. And this could be something, listeners, that you do in that meeting that you booked with yourself. Reflect, look at those areas of the business that Justine has taken us through, to really look at what is that weakness, and then what's something that I can do about it, and also acknowledge your strengths. So really incredible action, Justine. Thank you. And I also know there's lots of resources that you have as well to help with this. So we're going to put a whole bunch of links in the show notes. But just as a quick summary, if people want to come and follow you, maybe friendly stalk you, maybe say hi, check out the work that you do, because you really are a game changer in this space. Where can they find you? Where would you like to direct them to?
I usually hang out on Instagram, because it just seems like a pretty, fun sort of platform. So you can find me over at Instagram at Flossi Files. That is Flossi with an I, Flossi, my childhood nickname. Or come and have a look at my website, flossi.com.au, again with an I. And I've also got a podcast, Secrets of Successful Business, which you ladies are going to be appearing on very soon.
So excited for that.
Very excited. And it is a great podcast, so make sure you get that into your listening ears as well. Thank you so much, Justine. Thanks everyone for listening. Ness, final words?
That's all. Thanks, Justine. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
See you next week.